What makes one person the exception to every rule an avoidant has ever created about relationships? Avoidants have strict rules about relationships, rules about how close people can get, rules about how much personal stuff they'll share, rules about when to pull back and when to disappear. These aren't daily decisions. They're automatic responses that decide who gets access and who gets shut out, who sees the real them and who gets the performance version. But every avoidant has that one person who broke every rule they thought was set in stone, the person who got closer than anyone was supposed to get, who learned more than anyone was supposed to know, who somehow got past every wall they'd built. That person didn't force their way in. They didn't argue or beg for special treatment. They became the exception through something much more subtle. Once you understand how this happens, you'll realize becoming the exception isn't about changing the avoidant. It's about naturally being the type of person that makes their rules pointless. Avoidant rules weren't created to keep good people out. They were created to keep pain out. Every boundary, every wall, every distance serves one purpose: protecting them from the vulnerability that once led to devastating hurt. Think about how these rules developed. Somewhere in their past, getting close meant getting hurt. Sharing personal information meant having it used against them later. Depending on someone meant being let down when they needed support most. These weren't one-time incidents. They were patterns that taught the avoidant that emotional safety required emotional distance. Their rules aren't random or cruel. They're survival tools that once worked perfectly. Don't get close because people leave. Don't share because people use secrets against you. Don't depend because dependence leads to disappointment. These rules protected them when they were most vulnerable and couldn't protect themselves any other way. But here's what happens over time. The same rules that once provided safety start limiting the very connections they actually want. The walls that kept pain out also keep love out. The distance that prevented hurt also prevents healing. When you understand avoidant rules come from past pain rather than being difficult on purpose, everything changes. You stop seeing boundaries as personal attacks and start seeing them as protection that once made sense but might not be needed anymore. This understanding changes how you approach them entirely. Instead of trying to tear down walls, you start showing them that walls aren't necessary with you. Instead of fighting their distance, you demonstrate that closeness with you feels different than closeness felt with others who hurt them. This shift is the first step toward becoming an exception. Instead of fighting their rules, you start acting in ways that make the rules feel unnecessary. Most people become the exception by accident. They naturally embody something the avoidant has never encountered before, something that makes their rules feel outdated. The first quality that makes someone an exception is emotional consistency without expecting it back. Most people give love and support, expecting equal return. When avoidants don't give back at the same level, people either try harder to earn reciprocation or withdraw in disappointment. This creates a transaction-based dynamic that feels suffocating to avoidants. Every act of kindness comes with an invisible price tag. Every gesture of care creates debt that needs to be repaid. This turns love into obligation and connection into a business exchange. But some people operate differently. They offer natural warmth and support without keeping score. They're genuinely happy to give what feels authentic, regardless of what comes back. This isn't people-pleasing or self-sacrifice. It's emotional abundance. Think about what this looks like in practice. Someone might bring coffee without expecting gratitude. They remember important dates without demanding the same consideration. They offer help during difficult times without keeping track of who helped whom last. When avoidants encounter this behavior, they experience something rare, the absence of emotional pressure. They're not worried about owing too much or not reciprocating adequately. The anxiety that usually comes with emotional generosity disappears. This elimination of emotional debt is revolutionary for avoidants. Most of their relationship experience involves feeling like they owe more than they can give. or like they're disappointing people by not matching their emotional intensity. But when someone operates from emotional abundance, avoidance can receive kindness without the burden of reciprocal obligation. They can accept care without feeling like they're failing someone by not providing the same level back. This doesn't mean they don't appreciate the care or that they never give back. It means they can receive and give from authentic impulse rather than obligation, which makes both feel more genuine and sustainable. The second quality that makes someone an exception is genuine interest in their authentic self rather than their performance. Most people are attracted to avoidance for wrong reasons. They're intrigued by mystery, excited by the challenge, or convinced they can fix emotional limitations. This creates a dynamic where the avoidant feels valued for their unavailability rather than their availability. Their emotional distance becomes the very thing that makes them interesting to others. This reinforces their belief that they need to maintain mystery and complexity to be worthy of attention. The problem is that being valued for your emotional unavailability is exhausting. It means you can never relax into just being yourself, because yourself isn't what attracted the person. Your emotional complexity was. But some people are different. They're genuinely interested in the person underneath the defenses. They see past performance to authentic personality and find that person naturally compelling. What does this actually look like? These people ask about hobbies, opinions, childhood memories, future dreams, things that have nothing to do with relationship dynamics or emotional availability. They want to know what makes the avoidant laugh, what they're passionate about, how they see the world. This shows up in subtle ways. They ask about actual thoughts and feelings rather than trying to decode behavior. They remember small details about their life, not the dramatic relationship stuff, but the everyday human stuff. They seem curious about perspectives that have nothing to do with relationships. They're not fascinated by the avoidant's emotional unavailability. They're interested in their personality when that unavailability isn't in the way. When avoidants realize someone actually likes who they are without performing, something fundamental shifts. They're not used to people appreciating their simplicity alongside their complexity. Most are attracted to figuring them out, but these individuals are attracted to who they discover once figured out. This creates something avoidants rarely experience, being valued for their authentic self rather than their emotional mystique. Instead of feeling like they need to maintain complexity to stay interesting, they can relax into being genuinely themselves. The third quality that makes someone an exception is authentic emotional independence. Avoidants are used to people who claim independence, but whose actions reveal neediness, insecurity, or desperate desire to be chosen. People who truly become exceptions demonstrate independence through behavior, not words. They have fulfilling lives that don't revolve around the avoidant's attention. They make plans without needing input or validation. They seem genuinely content whether the avoidant is available or not. But their independence isn't cold, it's warm and inclusive. They don't need the avoidant, but genuinely enjoy their company when offered. They're not proving independence by being distant, and they're not hiding their enjoyment of connection. This creates something avoidants haven't experienced. Someone simultaneously independent and warm, self-sufficient and interested. Most people in their history have been either needy, triggering flight response, or distant, familiar, but unsatisfying. When avoidants encounter someone who doesn't need anything from them to feel good, but also doesn't push them away, they experience connection without suffocation. They can get close without worrying about becoming responsible for someone's emotional well-being. The fourth quality that makes someone an exception is seeing and appreciating their subtle emotional efforts. Avoidants make emotional efforts constantly. They're just subtle and often unrecognized by people expecting traditional displays of care. Here's what most people miss. Avoidants often show love in practical ways rather than emotional ones. They remember you mentioned being stressed about a work deadline and check in about it weeks later. They notice you're tired and handle something you usually do without making a big deal about it. They consistently show up when they say they will, even when it's inconvenient. These efforts are real and meaningful, but they don't look like what most people expect from emotional investment. People want declarations of love, romantic gestures, or dramatic displays of devotion. When avoidants offer quiet consistency instead, it often goes unnoticed or unappreciated. Those who become exceptions notice when avoidants remember conversation details. They appreciate when avoidants make time or offer practical help. They recognize that consistent showing up, even without big gestures, is meaningful care. But there's something deeper happening here. When someone appreciates these subtle efforts, they're validating the avoidant's natural way of expressing care rather than asking them to express it differently. Most people miss these efforts because they want verbal affirmations, romantic gestures, or clear prioritization. When avoidants offer practical care instead of emotional demonstration, people feel unseen and unvalued. This creates a cycle where the avoidant feels like their efforts don't matter, so they stop making them. The person feels uncared for because they don't recognize the efforts that were being made. Both people end up feeling unappreciated and misunderstood. But those who understand this quality understand that avoidants often show love through actions rather than words, consistency rather than intensity, presence rather than proclamation. When avoidants realize their efforts are noticed and appreciated, something powerful happens. Instead of feeling inadequate or invisible, they feel understood and valued for who they actually are, rather than who someone wants them to become. This validation doesn't just make them feel better, it makes them want to offer more. When your natural way of caring is appreciated rather than criticized, you naturally want to give more of it. The fifth quality that makes someone an exception is maintaining emotional boundaries without creating walls. There's a difference between healthy boundaries and defensive walls that most people don't understand. Walls keep everyone out indiscriminately. Boundaries allow connection while protecting your emotional well-being. People who become exceptions understand this distinction naturally. They don't become emotionally enmeshed with the avoidance moods or problems, but they also don't shut down emotionally to protect themselves. When an avoidant is having a difficult day, these individuals can offer support without absorbing the avoidant's emotional state as their own. When an avoidant is distant, they don't take it personally, but they also don't become distant themselves out of defensiveness. This creates something avoidants rarely experience, someone who can stay emotionally present during their difficult moments without becoming overwhelmed or reactive, someone who can maintain their own emotional stability while still being available for connection. Most people either become emotionally flooded by the avoidant's struggles, which feels suffocating to the avoidant, or they shut down emotionally to protect themselves, which reinforces the avoidant's belief that people can't handle their authentic emotional experience. But those who understand healthy boundaries can remain caring and present without losing themselves in the process. They can support without rescuing, care without controlling, and love without losing their own emotional center. This demonstrates to avoidants what healthy emotional regulation looks like. They see someone who can handle emotional complexity without becoming destabilized by it, which makes them feel safer about sharing their own emotional experiences. When avoidants encounter someone with healthy boundaries, they realize they can be authentically themselves, including their difficult emotions, without destroying the connection or overwhelming the other person. The sixth quality is creating emotional safety without forcing intimacy. Most people think emotional safety and intimacy are the same, but to avoidants, they're completely different. Emotional intimacy feels demanding. It requires sharing, reciprocation, and mutual emotional labor. It comes with expectations and obligations. When someone pushes for intimacy, avoidants feel pressured to give more than feels comfortable, faster than feels natural. Emotional safety is something else entirely. It's simply the absence of judgment, pressure, or chaos. It's an environment where they can be themselves without performance or defense. Here's the difference. Intimacy asks for more. Safety just accepts what's already there. Intimacy demands deeper sharing. Safety appreciates whatever is naturally shared. Intimacy has expectations about how much vulnerability should be present. Safety has no expectations at all. People who create emotional safety do this naturally through emotional stability and non-reactive responses. When an avoidant is distant, these individuals don't take it personally or try closing the gap. When sharing something personal, they don't overreact or demand more. When inconsistent, they remain steady without becoming cold. Think about what this looks like practically. If an avoidant shares something personal, most people either get excited about the breakthrough and push for more sharing, or they reciprocate by sharing something equally personal, whether the avoidant wants to hear it or not. But those who understand this quality simply receive what's shared with appreciation and respect, without making it mean more than it means, or using it as permission to push for additional vulnerability. This creates unique relational space where avoidants can express authentic personality without triggering anxiety. They're not constantly managing someone else's reactions to their natural behavior. The beautiful thing about safety is that it often leads to intimacy naturally, but intimacy that's chosen rather than demanded. When avoidants feel truly safe, they often share more than they ever intended to. Not because they're being asked to, but because they finally feel like they can. But it happens on their timeline, at their pace, in their way. And because it's chosen rather than coerced, it feels genuine and sustainable rather than overwhelming and temporary. The seventh quality is naturally mirroring their authentic emotional pace. Those who become exceptions don't try speeding up the avoidant's emotional development, but also don't slow down their own authenticity to match limitations. This creates natural rhythm where both can be themselves without pressure to change. The person doesn't hide emotional nature to make the avoidant comfortable, but also doesn't demand the avoidant match their expression to stay connected. Most avoidant relationships involve emotional negotiation, where someone's pushing for more or settling for less. With those who understand this quality, there's natural flow where both operate at authentic emotional levels without conflict. This happens because these individuals have genuine emotional abundance. They're not looking to the avoidant to meet needs that can only be met internally. They appreciate what's naturally offered without needing it more intense or consistent. They also don't diminish their expression to make the avoidant comfortable. They continue being naturally warm and available while accepting the avoidant may not reciprocate at the same level. The impact is profound. Instead of feeling pressure to perform more availability than natural, or that their natural expression is inadequate, avoidants feel accepted at their authentic level while seeing healthier emotional modeling. Over time, this often leads to natural expansion of emotional comfort zones, not through pressure, but through positive modeling and safety to explore without obligation. The eighth quality is embodying secure attachment naturally. Most avoidants find secure attachment theoretical or intimidating when presented as something they should develop. But when they encounter it naturally in another person, it becomes compelling rather than pressuring. Those who become exceptions demonstrate secure attachment in practice, consistency without clinginess, independence without isolation, openness without overwhelming sharing, boundaries without walls. They're living examples of healthy emotional functioning without making the avoidant feel inadequate. This modeling is more powerful than any conversation about attachment theory. Avoidants observe and experience secure attachment in action, which often awakens their own capacity for healthier patterns. When spending time around someone who naturally embodies these qualities, avoidants often find themselves acting differently, more open, available, willing to be vulnerable. This happens naturally rather than through effort, making it feel safe and sustainable. This is how people naturally expand avoidant emotional capacity. Not through demanding change, but creating environments where change feels safe and attractive rather than threatening. The most important thing to understand: becoming an exception can't be manufactured. It requires genuine personal development and emotional health. You can't fake independence, manufacture authentic interest, or perform secure attachment without it feeling artificial. This is why trying to become an exception rarely works. Strategies people use, playing hard to get, acting independent, withholding emotion, are performances avoidants see through immediately. People who truly become exceptions aren't trying to be anything other than authentic. They've done emotional work, developed genuine independence, learned to love without neediness, and naturally embody qualities that feel safe to avoidance. But here's what's really important. Becoming an exception isn't about changing yourself to appeal to avoidance. It's about developing into your most emotionally healthy self, which happens to be naturally attractive to all attachment styles. The qualities that make someone an exception, emotional independence, genuine interest in others' authentic selves, consistency without clinginess, appreciation without demanding more, these are simply qualities of emotionally mature, secure people. When someone develops these authentically, they don't just become attractive to avoidance. They become someone who naturally attracts healthy dynamics with everyone because they're operating from abundance rather than neediness. The irony is that the more genuinely someone develops these qualities for their own health, the less they need anyone to make exceptions for them. They become someone who naturally creates connections that serve both people. Avoidants don't make exceptions because someone convinces them to. They make exceptions because they encounter someone who makes their usual rules feel unnecessary rather than threatened. When someone tries arguing past boundaries or proving they deserve exceptional treatment, they're actually reinforcing the need for those boundaries. They're demonstrating exactly the kind of pressure their rules were designed to protect against. But when someone naturally embodies these qualities, the defensive rules start feeling outdated. Avoidants don't consciously decide to make exceptions. They gradually realize their usual strategies don't seem necessary with this person. Their rules were designed to protect from people who need too much, demand too much, or judge too harshly. When someone naturally doesn't do those things, the rules become irrelevant. The transformation happens organically. Instead of needing to maintain distance, they feel safe getting closer. Instead of limiting sharing, they feel comfortable being more open. Instead of controlling pace, they feel okay letting things develop naturally. But even if someone naturally embodies all these qualities, not every avoidant will make an exception for them. And that's not a reflection of their worth or ability to create healthy connections. Some avoidants are too committed to defensive patterns to recognize even the healthiest offering. Some aren't ready for the kind of connection these qualities create. Some are dealing with trauma that prevents responding to even the most secure behavior. There's also timing to consider. An avoidant might meet someone who embodies all these qualities at a time when they're too overwhelmed by work, family stress, or personal struggles to be emotionally available to anyone. Sometimes, the most secure person in the world shows up at the wrong moment in someone's life. And some avoidants have become so comfortable with their defensive patterns that they've forgotten what healthy connection feels like. When they encounter it, it might feel foreign or uncomfortable rather than attractive. They might actually prefer the familiar dysfunction of push-pull dynamics over the unfamiliar steadiness of secure connection. This doesn't mean there's anything wrong with someone's approach or emotional development. It just means that becoming an exception isn't guaranteed, even when you do everything right. This is why focus must be on your own emotional health rather than creating specific outcomes with particular people. When someone develops genuine security and independence, they attract people ready to appreciate and reciprocate healthy connection. The goal isn't becoming an exception to someone's rules. The goal is becoming so emotionally healthy that you naturally create relationships where defensive rules aren't necessary, where both people can be authentic and connected without fear or drama. But here's something important to understand about this process. Developing these qualities isn't just about attracting avoidance. These are the qualities that make all relationships healthier and more satisfying. When someone operates from emotional abundance rather than neediness, they naturally attract people who are also emotionally healthy. When they appreciate people for who they are, rather than trying to change them, they create space for authentic connection. When they maintain independence while being warm and available, they model what secure attachment actually looks like. These qualities serve someone regardless of whether they ever meet an avoidant, date an avoidant, or become an exception to anyone's rules. They make them a better friend, partner, family member, and colleague because they come from a place of emotional maturity and self-awareness. When someone reaches this level of development, they don't need anyone to make exceptions because they're naturally attracted to people who don't need to create rules to protect themselves from them in the first place, and they start gravitating toward people who are emotionally available, who appreciate their natural way of connecting, who don't need them to perform or prove their worth. The whole question of becoming an exception becomes irrelevant because they're creating connections where exceptions aren't needed. There's something beautifully circular about this process. The more someone develops these qualities for their own growth and well-being, the less they need any particular person to validate them. The less they need external validation, the more naturally attractive they become to emotionally healthy people, including avoidants who are ready to move beyond their defensive patterns. And if they do encounter an avoidant who makes an exception for them, the relationship will be healthier because it's built on genuine compatibility rather than on efforts to earn special treatment. It becomes a connection between two people who appreciate each other authentically rather than a dynamic where one person has special status in the other's life. This is the paradox of becoming an exception. The less you try to become one, the more likely it is to happen naturally. And the more likely it is to happen, the less you need it to happen for your own sense of worth and well-being. Have you recognized these qualities in yourself or seen them in people who naturally connect with avoidance? Drop a comment about which quality feels most important to develop. If this helped you understand what creates exceptions in avoidant relationships, like this video and subscribe for more insights about building authentic connection through personal development. Thanks for watching.